If you want to do a long hike in Europe in 2026, but don't want to sleep in a tent or carry a heavy pack, then stick around because I'm going to share with you everything you need to know on how to hike the Fisherman Trail in Portugal and how to plan it in 2026. After hiking the Pacific Crest Trail and Colorado Trail, I knew I wanted another long distance hike, but I also knew I wanted to change things up and experience something new. I was craving a different pace, shorter days, sleeping in beds, and enjoying more of the local experience with delicious food every day that wasn't ramen bombs or instant oatmeal. And I'll be honest, I felt really excited imagining an alternative to crawling into my sleeping bag after a 30-mile day. So in April 2025, me and some of my PCT friends met up in Portugal and we hiked the Fisherman's Trail, and it exceeded all of my expectations. So let's get into it: what the trail is, what it feels like to hike day to day, how long it takes, where to sleep, and what to pack. The Fisherman Trail is a coastal route in southwestern Portugal, part of the Algarve region, and it's part of the larger network called the Rota Vicentina. And a super cool fact is that these paths were originally used by local fishermen to access the ocean. So you're literally walking these narrow coastal paths that wind along the cliffs, the beaches, and small fishermen villages. The full route is 140 miles or 230 kilometers, and most people hike it in about 10 to 14 days. I think I personally took about 12 days to complete the trail. And what I love about this trail, it is not a wake up at 5 a.m. and crush 25 miles kind of experience. And my recommendation is to take it slow. There's no rush. So enjoy the long breaks, just staring out at the ocean, stop for lunch in the village, just soak it all in. You're walking point to point, usually starting in Porto Covo in the north, and you're hiking south all the way down to Lagos with the Atlantic Ocean beside you almost the entire way. And also, if you're looking for a gentle entry point into overnight hiking, I really think the Fisherman Trail is an awesome place to start, and I'll share more of why I think that when I get into the safety and navigation. So let's talk a little bit about how this trail really becomes a luxury through hike. So if you've done any longer trails in the US, this will feel like a completely different experience. There's no wild camping, which means you can leave your entire sleep system at home and sleep in a real bed every night with a hot shower waiting for you at the end of the day. Some nights I stayed in a shared hostel. Other nights I had an entire apartment with my laundry and a big kitchen where I could cook my own meals, and I just loved the range and variety from day to day. Now, I will say I've seen hikers wild camp along this trail, and I'm all about hike your own hike, but this is a protected natural area with delicate flora, and wild camping isn't allowed. So I did choose to respect those regulations, and honestly, I just loved sleeping in a bed every single night. Okay, let's talk about the logistics. They're relatively simple, which is flying into Lisbon is absolutely the best option. And if you have time, I highly recommend staying in Lisbon for a few nights. I've been to that city a few times and I absolutely love it. So if you're thinking staying a few nights in Lagos versus Lisbon, I personally would absolutely recommend Lisbon over Lagos. Now, the starting point is in Porto Covo. It's about a 2-hour bus ride south of Lisbon, and you can book the bus on the local site called the Rede Expressos. The ticket's about €10. It's super comfortable, the ride, and there's plenty of space for your luggage and your backpacks. Now, when I hiked it in April, I did book all of my accommodation, I think in February, and I highly recommend booking your accommodation in advance. I use mainly booking.com and Airbnb, and it's always a great option to compare the prices on both platforms. And some nights I spent as low as €15, and other nights I spent up to €80 per night. I think overall I spent about €350 on accommodation for myself, given that most of this was shared accommodation with my husband and 2 other hikers. All the more reason to go with some friends, because hiking with other people is always a great way to keep costs down. Okay, let's talk about what the hiking is actually like. A typical mileage day could be around 11 miles, 18 kilometers, and the terrain is relatively flat, so there just isn't any rush to wake up mega early, which I absolutely loved. Instead, you can have a lovely sleep in because your body probably needs the extra sleep from all the sun exposure, the Vino Verde, which is a delicious local wine, and all of the hiking. So maybe you make yourself breakfast in your accommodation, or you find a local cafe and order a galao, which is latte in Portuguese, and a pastel del nata, which is the iconic custard pastry, and maybe you buy a few extras to carry out for the day. And then eventually you hit the trail for another spectacular day of hiking. Now, terrain-wise, I would say it's easy to moderate, but of course that's quite subjective. Most days are pretty flat. I remember one day being quite mountainous, which honestly was super fun. We were dropping down to sea level and then hiking back up to the cliff and then back down and up. I would say the big side note for this trail is that you're basically walking in sand all day long, and that can get physically draining. So I'd highly recommend trekking poles and gaiters. Unfortunately, I didn't have either of these with me on my trip, and I particularly really miss my gaiters because I was emptying literal heaps of sand out of my shoes every few hours. The trail isn't technical, but again, the sand just changes everything, so just prepare yourself for that aspect. Now, quick note on Leave No Trace. There is a designated path on the Fisherman's Trail for a reason. The surrounding flora is super delicate, and because the sand walking can get really tiring, I did see a few hikers leaving this designated trail and walking through the fragile vegetation. Please don't do that. If you don't like walking on sand all day, then the Fisherman's Trail is probably not for you. So please stay on trail. Okay, let's talk about the scenery and kind of what it feels like every single day. Now, the majority of the trail is along the coast, which might sound monotonous, like, okay, same view every day, just expansive ocean. But it's not like that at all. I love this trail for the variety. Every single day was different. It was so cool. One day you're walking along these dramatic cliffs with deep red sandstone. Another day you're on these pristine sandy beaches and you can take a dip in the ocean even though it's cold. And other days you're looking at these like layered rock formations along the shoreline and you're like, how did the world even get pulled apart like this? It's so incredible. Every day is honestly amazing. So make sure you take lots of photos and videos because you're going to want to remember this experience. So you continue along with your day, and at lunchtime, maybe you stop in a local village and enjoy something tasty, or maybe you've packed a tortilla and you're eating it with the ocean views. It's very much a choose your own adventure kind of travel. And then you arrive in the next town. Okay, let's talk about gear. So because you're not camping, you can pack super light. I had my frameless Gossamer Gear G420 pack. It was a 42 liter and it was absolutely perfect for this hike. Now, I would recommend a rain jacket. Weather is unpredictable on the Atlantic coast. I hiked in mid-April and the first few days were really rainy. The first day, actually, we got super soaked. It was pretty fun because we knew we could just dry off in our accommodation later in the day, but definitely be prepared to get wet, especially if you're hiking in the springtime. Windbreaker is also an essential item. It gets really windy on the coast. The first day we got hit with a lot of rain, a lot of wind. The sand was blowing around, so definitely be prepared for kind of a full-on sandstorm while you're walking this trail. I'm eating so much sand! Pants I would definitely recommend as well. I did wear shorts and I wish I'd had hiking pants because there's a really hot day and because there's no shade, my legs got pretty burnt. And also with the sand getting kind of blown around with the wind, the pants are just a really nice kind of extra layer of protection. Now, water is really easy to get in towns and tap water is safe. I didn't love the taste of the tap water, so I was adding Tang and electrolytes and that was totally fine. I did see a lot of people buying plastic water bottles and maybe this is just a pet peeve, but hiking for me is kind of a sustainability thing, connecting with nature, and buying plastic bottles just kind of conflicts with that. I would recommend sunscreen, sun protection, a good hat. Sun hoodies are probably essential for this. The trail is really exposed. There's no shade, so really make sure you're protecting yourself against the elements. Now, swimming, there's plenty of chances to dip in the ocean. I didn't bring a bathing suit, but in hindsight, I would have loved to have a change of clothes out of like my salty and wet clothing. But I also didn't bring a towel because you can air dry pretty fast in the sun. Hiking sandals could be nice for the beach sections, but honestly, I was just walking barefoot for those sections and that was very lovely. And the bird watching is so cool. The storks have the most impressive nests on top of the rocks, so definitely, if you have space, bring some binoculars. One thing I absolutely loved having was my Z-Lite pad as a sit pad for breaks, especially when the sand gets like super, super hot. It's basically an essential item for me. It's also a great use for a yoga mat. Okay, let's talk about navigation and resources. What I really loved about this trail is how straightforward the navigation is, and hence why I think this is an awesome starting point for anyone wanting to get into overnight hiking. So you'll follow the blue and green markers, and once in a while you will see red and yellow as well, which is another route of the Rota Vicentina network called the Historical Way. It goes more inland, and it looks like a great option if you want to bike it. It seemed like there were a lot of cool biking routes in this region. Now, the official Rota Vicentina website is crazy helpful. It breaks down each stage with the distance and elevation, and even gives you options if you want to shorten your hike that day, which I think is really cool. You can download the GPX files, which is what I did, and they were super, super helpful. Now, I always find the hardest part, I don't know if you guys are the same way, but the hardest part of navigation is actually once you get off trail and you're in town and you have this moment where you're like, okay, how do I get back on trail? Where am I? I had this moment in Sagres, which is one of the bigger towns along the trail. Again, super fun town. I've been there a few times for yoga. Highly recommend staying for a few nights if you have the time. So aside from Lagos, which is the terminus, this is definitely one of the bigger places. And I was wandering around aimlessly in the morning for a few minutes and luckily eventually did find the trail again. I also mentioned the bus earlier, the Rede Expressos. One day our friend didn't really feel like hiking and just wanted to chill. So he checked the schedule and found that the route actually picked him up from the town we were in and brought him to the next town. So it's a super handy resource for logistics. So definitely take advantage of that as well if you're having any issues and you need to skip a day of hiking. And speaking of transportation, there's also a luggage service called the Luggage Transfers Rota Vicentina. I saw a lot of hikers using it, and their luggage would essentially be waiting for them at their next accommodation. So I think that's a great option if you want to hike with a lighter pack and have your clothes and toiletries waiting for you at the end of the day. And stay open to connection. Now, most locals do speak a little bit of English, but I think learning a few Portuguese phrases really does go a long way. So even a simple obrigada, which is thank you, or a bom dia is hello, really makes people smile. The Fisherman Trail offers everything I love about a hiking holiday. It really felt like a true vacation, sleeping in a bed, enjoying all the local delicacies. So for those that are new to long trails, I think the Fisherman Trail is so approachable, it's so well marked, it's a perfect starting point. And for seasoned thru hikers, it's an awesome chance to experience a change of pace, lighter pack, and just more comfort. So let me know if the Fisherman Trail is on your bucket list or maybe already in the books for this year. And make sure to check out my daily vlogs from the trek for a deeper dive into the day-to-day experience. So happy trails, and maybe I'll see you in Portugal on the Fisherman Trail.